Let me tell you a story that will change how you see trust and betrayal forever. In a kingdom surrounded by ancient forests, there lived a powerful king named Adeyemi. His only daughter, Adetola, was beautiful, proud, and deeply restless. She had everything a princess could want, but it was never enough. She watched traders arrive at the palace with bags of gold and fine cloth, and a bold fire ignited in her chest. She wanted that life. She wanted to conquer the trading roads herself. One morning she knelt before her father and made a shocking request. "Father, I want to leave the palace. I want to become a trader." The throne room went completely silent. The elders stared in absolute disbelief. No princess in their long history had ever walked the harsh, dangerous trading routes. But King Adeyemi loved his daughter more than his own crown. He did not say no. Instead, he raised his hand to silence the whispering court. "We will not decide this alone," the king declared. "Send for Baba Ifa. We must let the oracle speak." The king knew the roads were full of deceit, but he trusted the ancient spirits. Adetola smiled brightly, feeling a sudden rush of victory, but she had no idea what was coming. The oracle was about to grant her wish, but it came with a terrifying condition. Baba Ifa arrived before sunset. He was an ancient priest, wrapped in white cloth, with cowrie shells hanging from his neck. When he looked at you, it felt like he was reading your deepest secrets. He sat on the floor, cast his sacred palm nuts, and chanted words no one understood. Finally, he looked up. "The oracle approves," Baba Ifa said. "The road will bless this princess with massive wealth." Adetola's heart exploded with joy. But the old priest was not smiling. "However, there is a strict condition," he warned. "She must focus only on her trade. No distractions, no secret desires. If she adds anything to her journey, the road will turn against her." He ordered a sacrifice of a white dove and palm oil at the river. Adetola agreed immediately, brushing off the warning. But before leaving, Baba Ifa leaned close to the king and whispered a chilling secret. "If your daughter breaks this sacred covenant, the road will swallow everything it gave her, and the price will be paid in blood." The next morning, Adetola performed the sacrifice. The white dove flew perfectly into the sky, signaling the spirit's acceptance. But as she walked away from the river, she did not pause to show respect. Her mind was already racing toward the wealth she would make. The covenant was sealed, but her focus was already cracking. Soon after, Adetola married a noble man named Akanbi. You need to understand who this man was to see what she threw away. Akanbi was kind, patient, and deeply generous. When Adetola told him about her plan to trade, he did not argue. Instead, he opened his treasure room. He gave her bags of gold, cowries, and the finest cloth to sell. As she packed for her first journey, Akambi held her hands gently. "Return to me exactly as you leave," he said softly, "with nothing hidden." Adetola kissed his cheek, telling him he worried too much. She left before sunrise, taking her loyal maid, Moreniki, with her. The oracle's blessing worked instantly. Adetola's first trip was a massive success. She bought perfectly and sold for huge profits. Traders everywhere admired the fierce new princess merchant. She returned home with bags heavier than when she left. Akambi was proud, and the king celebrated her talent. Her second trip was even better. By her third trip, she walked through the markets like she owned them. Wealth flowed into her hands just as the spirits had promised. Everything was perfect. But remember the oracle's warning? The road only blesses those who stay entirely focused. And a massive distraction was about to walk right into Adetola's life, testing her obedience in the most dangerous way possible. His name was Soji. Adetola first saw him standing near a bustling cloth stall. He was tall, well-dressed, and had a smile that could easily make a woman forget her purpose. "You must be new here," Soji said, his voice smooth like warm honey. "I have never seen anyone trade the way you do." Adetola laughed, and that small laugh was the beginning of her downfall. Soon, Soji became her shadow. Every time she traveled to the trading village, he was waiting. He carried her goods, brought her small gifts, and listened to her in a way Akanbi never did. Akanbi gave her steady peace, but Soji gave her wild excitement. Slowly, the poison of distraction entered her heart. Adetola began looking forward to the journeys not for the gold, but for Soji. One evening, sitting under a large tree after the market closed, Adetola made her first fatal mistake. Wanting to impress this charming stranger, she leaned in and whispered her biggest secret. "I am not just a normal trader. My father is a powerful king. I am a princess." Soji's eyes widened immediately. But it was not out of love or admiration. It was pure, calculating hunger. "A princess," he whispered back, a dark smile forming on his lips. She thought she had won his heart, but she had just handed a hungry wolf the keys to her life. We must pause to talk about Moreniki, Adetola's quiet and loyal maid. Moreniki carried the goods and cooked the meals, but she also watched everything. And what she saw terrified her. She noticed that Soji did not look at Adetola with love. He looked at her the way a hunter stares at a trapped animal. His eyes constantly drifted to Adetola's heavy money bags. He asked far too many questions. How wealthy was her father? How much gold did her husband give her? Late one night, Moreniki could no longer stay silent. She grabbed Adetola's arm in their room. "My lady, please listen to me," she begged. "That man is dangerous. He watches your gold, not your face. Stay away from him." Adetola's eyes turned completely cold. Her pride flared up like a raging fire. "You are just jealous," Adetola hissed. "Jealous that someone finally sees me for who I am." "I am not jealous. I am afraid for you," Moreniki cried out. Adetola stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "If you ever speak about Soji again, I will send you back to the palace in total disgrace. Do you understand me?" Moreniki's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly and stepped back. The threat worked. Moreniki never spoke of it again, and just like that, the very last voice of truth that could have saved the princess was silenced forever. With Moreniki silenced, Adetola fell completely into Soji's trap. She began spending much less time trading and almost all her time with him. She bought fewer goods and made terrible deals, but she hardly noticed. She was too busy telling Soji everything. She revealed exactly how much Akanbi gave her and when she would travel next. She even started handing Soji her own cowries whenever he claimed he had sudden debts or a sick relative. She was openly feeding a predator and calling it romance. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Akanbi could not sleep. Night after night, horrifying dreams invaded his mind. He saw a clear river suddenly turning thick and red. He saw a beautiful white dove falling from the sky with broken wings. Worst of all, he saw Adetola walking blindly into a pitch-black forest. In the dream, he screamed her name until his throat bled, but she could not hear him. Akanbi woke up drenched in cold sweat, his heart hammering in his chest. He did not know about Soji yet, but his spirit felt the heavy, creeping presence of evil. The oracle's covenant was cracking, and Akambi could feel the spiritual shift. When Adetola finally returned home from her latest trip, she had barely made any profit. Akambi sat her down, looking deep into her eyes. He knew he had to stop her before it was too late. Akambi's voice was low and serious. "Do not go on the next trip," he pleaded. Adetola frowned, crossing her arms. "Why not?" "I have seen dark, terrible things in my dreams," Akambi said. "Something evil is following you on that trading road." Adetola stared at her husband and laughed bitterly. "I have grown far beyond your fears, Akambi. You cannot cage me." She packed her bags that exact night, in stuffing them with more gold than she had ever taken before. She wanted to prove him wrong. But Akambi was not the only one feeling the danger. King Adeyemi had heard unsettling whispers from traveling merchants. They spoke of the princess wandering the markets with a strange, smooth-talking man. Terrified for his daughter, the king immediately summoned Baba Ifa. The ancient priest cast his divination nuts, and his face instantly darkened like a storm cloud. "The covenant is bending, my king," Baba Ifa whispered, his hand shaking. "It has not snapped yet, but it is very close. If she goes back, the road will demand its brutal payment." Panic struck the king. He immediately sent his fastest messenger on horseback to stop Adetola, but he was too late. She had slipped out of the palace before sunrise. Adetola walked the dirt paths quickly, her heart racing with thrill. She carried a massive fortune, completely unaware that she was rushing directly toward her own tragic destruction. As Adetola and Morinike approached the trading village, the bright morning sky suddenly turned pitch black. Heavy, unnatural clouds rolled in from nowhere. A freezing wind whipped through the trees, chilling them to the bone. Morinike shivered and whispered, "My lady, look at the sky. The spirits are deeply angry. We should turn back." Adetola simply rolled her eyes. "It is just bad weather, Morinike. Stop acting like a frightened child." Adetola marched straight into the busy market. She did not stop at a single stall to look at cloth. She did not negotiate any prices. The oracle had commanded her to focus strictly on her trade, but trade was the absolute last thing on her mind. Her eyes desperately searched the crowded market for one face only. And there he was. Soji stood near the edge of the stalls, smiling wider than he ever had before. But if Adetola had looked closely, she would have seen that the warmth in his eyes was entirely gone. They were empty and cold. "You actually came," Soji said softly. "I always come for you," Adetola replied, her voice full of blind affection. Soji's eyes flicked down to the incredibly heavy bag resting on her shoulder. His jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. "Come with me," he whispered smoothly. "I have a very special surprise planned, just for you." Adetola blindly ordered Morinike to wait at the village inn. The loyal maid opened her mouth to argue, but one fierce glare from the princess silenced her. Morinike watched her lady walk away into the crowd, her stomach twisting with absolute dread. Soji led Adetola far away from the bustling market. They walked past the food sellers, past the final row of village huts, and deep into the quiet shadows. They finally stopped at an old, unfinished mud building near the very edge of the dense forest. Thick bushes swallowed the cracked walls. There was absolutely no one around for miles. "Where are we?" Adetola asked, finally feeling a tiny prick of nervous hesitation. "Somewhere perfectly private, Soji replied smoothly. Trust me. They stepped inside. The air was damp, cold, and smelled like rotting wood. The second they crossed the threshold, Soji slammed the heavy wooden door shut behind them. Instantly, the charming illusion shattered. Soji's warm smile vanished entirely. His shoulders squared and his eyes turned as hard as stone. The gentle lover she thought she knew was completely gone, replaced by a ruthless stranger. Give me the money, Soji commanded, his voice dead and flat. Adetola chuckled nervously, thinking it was a strange joke. Stop playing around, Soji. He stepped forward and aggressively twisted her arm until she screamed in agony. I am not playing. Give me everything. Adetola fought back with everything she had. She kicked, scratched, and screamed for help until her throat burned. But they were too far from the village, and Soji was far too strong. With a vicious swing, he struck her across the face. Adetola collapsed hard against the dusty floor, her head spinning. Soji snatched the heavy bag from her trembling hands. He ripped it open, staring greedily at the gold, cowries, and expensive jewelry. In everything her devoted husband had freely given her was now in the hands of a monster. You told me you were a royal princess, Soji sneered, standing over her terrified body. You bragged about your father's kingdom and your husband's endless gold. You handed me the knife, Adetola, and now you wonder why you are bleeding. He violently struck her again, and then again, making sure she would not be able to follow him. When she finally stopped moving, he turned and vanished into the thick forest, taking all her wealth with him. Night quickly fell. Adetola lay broken and bleeding on the freezing dirt floor. In the pitch-black silence, every warning she had arrogantly ignored screamed in her mind. Baba Ifa's strict condition, Moreniki's desperate tears, Akanbi's haunting dreams. She had silenced the people who truly loved her for a man who only wanted to destroy her. I did this to myself, she sobbed into the darkness. Moreniki waited anxiously at the inn all night. When the sun finally rose with no sign of the princess, sheer panic consumed her. She ran through the village screaming for help and instantly sent word back to the kingdom. When Akanbi received the terrifying message, his heart shattered. He mounted his fastest horse and rode straight to King Adeyemi. The great king's face turned completely to stone when he heard the news. Turn every single village upside down, the king roared. Find my daughter! Hundreds of royal warriors flooded the trading routes. Akanbi rode at the front, his chest tight with unbearable dread. Moreniki guided them to the edge of the market where she last saw the pair. From there, a warrior spotted something horrifying on the ground, a fresh trail of blood leading into the overgrown bushes. They followed the crimson drops until they reached the abandoned mud building. When Akanbi kicked the door open, the sight broke every man in the room. Adetola lay curled in the dirt, beaten, bruised, and stripped of everything. The mighty King Adeyemi dropped to his knees in the dust and wept loudly for his broken child. Akanbi stood frozen in the doorway. He did not cry, but his absolute silence carried a pain far heavier than tears. They carefully lifted the ruined princess and carried her home, but they could never recover what she had truly lost. Adetola's physical wounds healed slowly, but her deep shame burned like an eternal fire. Akanbi personally changed her bandages and brought her food, but he rarely spoke. The silence in their home was suffocating. Finally, unable to bear the guilt, Adetola fell to her knees before him. Weeping uncontrollably, she confessed every terrible detail: the secret meetings, the stolen money, the foolish lies, and the brutal betrayal. She begged him for forgiveness. Akanbi listened quietly until she finished. He looked down at her with hollow, devastated eyes. "You did not just betray me with another man," Akanbi said softly. "You betrayed yourself with your own mouth. Every single secret you willingly told him became the weapon he used to destroy you." He turned and walked away into the shadows, leaving her completely alone with the heavy consequences of her pride. The oracle's warning had come perfectly true. She chased a distraction, and the road swallowed everything. Here is the powerful lesson of Adetola's tragic downfall. When life blesses you, walk your path with strict discipline, not blind desire. Adultery is a road that always ends in devastating loss. Loose lips will always invite hungry wolves, and every lie you tell builds the very trap you will eventually fall into. If you ignore the desperate warnings of those who truly love you, you will have to pay the ultimate price completely alone. What lesson will you take from this story?